It's been nearly 4 months since Mary Simon was sworn in as Governor General. This week, she marked her first Remembrance Day as Commander-in-Chief. She's also now had her first foreign trip to Germany. She's sworn in a federal cabinet, and in just over a week's time, she will deliver her first speech from the throne. 3 months into the job, and she says she's heard from Canadians about the issues they want her to champion. She's ready to get to work. I sat down with her at Rideau Hall this past week. Here's our conversation. You've been an ambassador twice, sort of, ambassador of the Circumpolar and to Denmark. You were part of constitutional negotiations. That clip of you and Trudeau Sr. is a great one. Part of land claims deals. I mean, there's so many things. And I wonder whether you feel that those experiences have prepared you for this role in a way maybe that you wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, well, I never thought I'd be the first Indigenous Governor General, but yes, of course, they have prepared me for this role. I understand a lot of different issues, but I'm always open for other ideas. I'm the type of person that is very kind of proactive, and I look for others to give me support and to work as a team. I think teamwork is very important, and you know, when I look back on all the different things that I've done, it was a chain of work. Yes. Like everything that we do, either within the Indigenous community or in other parts of the country, there are linkages that are very clear in my mind. And throughout my work over the next 5 years, I'm going to be creating those linkages between education, between youth, between mental health, climate change, and the overarching issue is reconciliation. So reconciliation is at the top of that chain, and Canadians have given me a very clear message when I was appointed that this is something they want me to work on.
Why do you say that? Because you heard from them saying that?
I heard from many Canadians, just messages after message after message, you know. So there were many people that were interested in my appointment, and I looked very carefully at what the messages said to me, because to me that was an indication of how the country felt. Yeah. And so I'm developing my work plan in that way.
I went back and watched the official apology, but I went back and watched your speech that you gave in the House, just to remind myself of what you said that day. And you said that you hoped that it would mark the end of this dark period in our collective history as a nation. I wouldn't mind you reflecting on where we are now from that day, and whether you think that has happened, whether that was a turning point, or whether it maybe took too long for us to get to where we are now.
Well, it's hard to gauge whether it took too long. You know, it depends on, I suppose, which perspective you're looking at it. But clearly, I think the apology was the beginning of a conversation that is happening in Canada now. But now I think we've gone to the stage now where we're willing to look at the truth. I think that the day that, you know, they found those unmarked graves of children that died in residential school, that was the day that I think the wound really opened up, because it actually made people realize that they were there, even though they were in the report for the TRC report. That event that told the story in a very open way just made people realize more and more that this is something we can't hide. We have to deal with it. And you know, I'm not in a political position here, but I can help people to understand and to bring about change that will help our relationship, build a better relationship. Because if we're going to have a country that doesn't just reflect a good image, but actually does things in its own backyard, then our people will be better off for it, both within the Indigenous community and also in the non-Indigenous community. I think Indigenous people are always very open to discussing these issues.
Yeah, you were an honorary witness at the TRC. You spoke there and you shared your experience, and please only go as far as you want to in me asking these questions. But one of the things that you experienced was that they deemed that you were not Inuk, and so you could not be forced to attend these schools. And you've talked about in the past and you talked about at the TRC, how you were sort of one of the children left behind in the village. And I wonder if you can talk about how even that was painful, even though you weren't forced to go to the school.
Yes, it was very painful. In hindsight, sometimes these events come back and you understand them better and understand why people were the way they were. As a child, you don't always understand that. I remember adults crying when we were around, and I never really understood why, but it was because they were missing their children so much. It wasn't that I wasn't considered an Inuk, because my grandmother and my mother were unilingual Inuit, and we lived an Inuit lifestyle, even though my father was white. It was like the Indian Act, which doesn't apply to Inuit, was applied to some families, and we were one of those families, so we weren't eligible to be educated under the federal system. Okay. It was difficult at the time, because in the end my father had to homeschool us because there was no other education. We had education up to grade 6 in federal day schools, where we weren't allowed to speak English in our schools, not English, but we weren't allowed to speak Inuktitut in school or in the school, on the school grounds. So that was happening even in our communities. But we still went to school every day. And in the end, I really wanted to get a good education. And my father and my parents really wanted us to have a better education. But we didn't have that opportunity, so my father made sure we got our education a different way. Wow. And that was kind of the beginning of where I thought things weren't right. Something was not right.
Not fair. Not
fair or not right, and that I started to get a better understanding of it as I grew older. And my father always used to say, if you want change, don't wait for somebody else to do it. Go do it yourself.
Wow, can you imagine what he would think now? He'd be like, well, she really took me. She really listened to me.
We did listen to him.
I want to ask you about French. You've committed to learning French. I guess you're taking lessons, I assume. Yes.
I am.
How is it going?
Well, it's going well. I made a commitment when I was appointed that I would learn. At my age, it might be a little bit more difficult, but nevertheless, I have a tutor, and I go for French lessons at least 2 or 3 times a week. And I try and fit it into my schedule, which is a bit challenging at times, but I do it. And I'm learning slowly. It's been 3 months since I've started, so I still can't really carry on a conversation, but I can understand a lot more.
Good. So. Were you surprised at the response, the reaction, in some quarters, not all?
Not really, no.
You thought it would
language is something that is very dear to everyone's heart.
Yes.
Like if someone tried to take Inuktitut away from me, I would be very upset.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about Rideau Hall. As you know, you came in at a time of great change and a lot of despondency, I think, amongst the staff. How bad was it when you walked in? And what have you done to try and reassure people that this is an okay place to work and that you are going to be a good boss?
Well, I didn't have to show them. I did it. I just did what I always do. I create a positive environment around me and create a team that I work with, and have had meetings with different members of Rideau Hall's staff, and things are going really well. I can't really comment on the past, but I came here with the view that I would be proactive, be positive, and make the changes that I felt would help everyone come back into Rideau Hall with a very positive outlook. And it's happening. I think some people take longer than others, but it's definitely happening right now. So I'm very, very happy about it.
Thank you for all that time. I appreciate it. Appreciate getting to know you a bit.
Yes, it's a pleasure.